Andor is quite possibly the best Star Wars television show that we've gotten so far. In my opinion, of course. But was anybody watching? Let's talk about it.
Jones Vibes.
What's up everyone, and welcome back to Jones Vibes. If you're new to the channel, I do movie and television reviews, and I also see through the lies of the Jedi. And today I'm finally talking about Andor. And if you're new here, go ahead and hit the like button if you're enjoying the content, as well as if you watched Andor. I'm going to be talking a lot about Star Wars in the coming year, so if you're a fan of all things from a galaxy far, far away, consider subscribing because videos are coming. But I know it took me a while to post a video and just to talk about Andor here on my channel, mainly because I wanted to watch the whole thing just through again. After the finale, the first time around, I was pretty overwhelmed, and I wanted to see if I was just like way overexcited or something like that, but the second go around of watching it proved to be just as good, if not better, of an experience. Really, I do think that this show is the best Star Wars television that's been created thus far, and I know that that might seem like a strong opinion, but when you really examine this show, it's pretty incredible that they were able to pull it off. But the craziest thing to me is that it just seems like a lot of people didn't check it out. I mean, the numbers weren't that low, but compared to some of the other shows, like, they seemed a little bit low. Luckily, season 2 is already greenlit, so that's not gonna have an effect, but still, I just found it very interesting. I'm really not sure why this show didn't get the attention that it deserved, especially with how action-packed some of the episodes were. And also the week-to-week format, I felt like kind of kept the pulse alive. And look, it's okay not to like this show. That's not really the road that I'm trying to go down right now. But it just seems to me that some of the critiques that I've seen so far are just kind of grasping at straws. And what I mean by that is just that some people seem to be pulling something out of nothing. But it would be hypocritical for me to say much, because like when I first saw Rogue One, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. Well, actually, the first time I saw Rogue One, somebody pulled the fire alarm in the theater and everybody was evacuated. So not the first time, but the second time, later that night, I went back to like a later midnight showing, and I walked out just kind of like, yeah, that was pretty good, especially the Vader stuff at the end. I thought it was interesting, but the subsequent watches ever since have been great, and throughout the years, it's really grown on me. I still wouldn't say that it's one of my favorite Star Wars films, but I do think it's great, and I think my first time watching it, I just didn't quite understand it. What was missing for me just initially was the overall character depth. Everything happens so fast, and then everybody dies, and you're just getting to know these people. But this show provides that context. Do you really know anyone in the midst of a rebellion?
Hey, that's pretty good.
And that's why I'm loving Andor so much, because this show is bringing that emotional weight to Rogue One that I so desperately needed. And I am 100,000% confident that the second season is only gonna add to that. And by that I mean, it's gonna do a lot. But why do you think that the fan reception was the way that it was, and why were viewer numbers down so much? Was it just because of a lack of lightsabers? I'm not sure, but please let me know in the comments what you think about it. But getting back to Andor, I think that this show was brilliant. I know that I've already been praising it quite a bit, but let's talk about the technical aspects here. And I'm gonna start a little bit outside the box. The music was a huge component for me. It was composed by Nicholas Britell, who was a pretty interesting choice. Check out his IMDb if you get a second, but from the opening scene and on, I was pretty much sucked in. Does anybody else agree that it was putting off like Blade Runner vibes, or like almost like Tron or something? There was just this low, like almost like tech house type beat. He was walking, opening scene, I was like, okay. Cassian just walking through the lower depths of Morlana 1, and you have these people in bubbles on the wall, and just this dark, rainy, grungy vibe that was really the first time that I had ever felt like Star Wars was something broader in scope. And the people that we're interacting with are not just casual extras like they can so often feel. Tony Gilroy did a fantastic job at putting us into the thick of things and taking us behind the scenes, letting us in on the darkness and also showing us that this galaxy, this world, is just as flawed as our own. And this entire series has been beautifully written so far. That's another thing that impressed me. That, along with some beautiful set pieces and cinematography, it just made for like a phenomenal journey. To me, at least. Personally, I'm happy that this show wasn't as reliant on the volume. The practical sets were really key to nailing the aesthetic. And you can't really fault Kenobi and the Book of Boba Fett. Honestly, the volume is kind of a child of the pandemic in a way. I know the technology was coming up before the pandemic hit, but the way that it was utilized during that time, it was a saving grace. But I feel like that's a big reason why both those shows just kind of have moments that feel off. And there is something so soothing and calming about getting back to practical. And they just put us on this journey with Andor, with Cassian, and you get the sense that even though we spend time with other characters, all of these pieces are gonna fit together and they're gonna matter. But we see Cassian or Cassa on Kenari as a kid and show Marva and the Clem backstory that cleverly leads us onto Ferrix and paints the picture of his reasoning for looking for his sister. His only motivation, really. And the way that this show is broken up into sections, I think is one of the more clever parts about its design. You have all the stuff on Ferrix. We meet Brix and B2EMO. Oh my gosh, I love that droid. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know, this is a hot take. He's like my favorite droid in Star Wars. But I mean, R2, C-3PO, I don't know. It's too soon. But then we're introduced to Luthen, leading to the next 3 episodes on Aldhani, and we're introduced to all these new characters. And it's kind of like, are you getting the vibe of it yet? During the Aldhani heist kind of 3 episodes, I was really starting to get the feel back of Rogue One. And also starting to think, like, all of these characters are disposable. It's sad, too, because you really start to like some of these characters, like Nemik in these 3 episodes. Nemik specifically provides so much, and the in-depth backstory that was written for him added that much more to the moment that you find out he's dead. This show clearly was not afraid to go there and show the pains of war, of a rebellion, and it's cool now to know that it all kind of started on Aldhani, with this ragtag team that included Cassian Andor. And God, that heist episode, right, was so good. Like, the visuals, I think it was called The Eye, but like the visuals in the sky, that was cinematography for film, not television. Oh man, I was so amped after that episode. But even outside of his main storyline, you have moments with Mon Mothma that were emotionally intense. This politician deciding to rebel and be a part of the effort, living a double life and not even telling her husband or her arranged husband. Sidebar, that guy sucked, by the way. I did not like that guy. And also, I'm growing my hair out right now, like I'm kind of in that middle stage and I'm trying to grow it out. If it ever looks like that, guys, would y'all just please let me know? I'll cut it immediately, because I want nothing to do with that vibe. But then freaking Cyril and Daedra are inside look at the Empire, and yeah, like Palpatine, he wasn't shown, but he was mentioned, and you could feel his presence, feel the pressure, and I'm not gonna lie, Daedra was haunting. No remorse, just stone cold Steve Austin. There really is this part of you that's kind of rooting for her, too. The antagonist has a motive that we can all somewhat understand. There's a cause for every character, and each character feels justified in doing what they're doing. But she eventually does kind of have like a breaking moment, a little bit more of a vulnerable moment near the end, and who's there to catch her? Mr. Cyril. When he was on screen, I was always pretty captivated. His entire persona revolves around the Empire. He reminded me of like an SS officer. Duty over everything. People start to believe that the actions that they're taking and the things that they're doing are good, even though morally they're actually terrible. This show provides such a solid and no doubt intentional look at some of our worldly problems. We even get an inside look at a Star Wars take of an internment camp or a prison. Cassian is falsely convicted and just thrown in unwarranted. And the way that that storyline just carried on over a few episodes, the attention to detail and the subtle lines of dialogue driving the tension between the prisoners and the guards, because you know where it's heading. You know it's heading towards a prison break. We eventually get to episode 10 titled One Way Out, where we have 2 of the best written and performed monologues that I've seen on television, seriously, in my life. Andy Serkis, which it was so good to see Andy Serkis, by the way, and I love all the week-to-week stuff. You have Andy Serkis and people like, is it Snoke's backstory? But yeah, over the intercom, encouraging all these prisoners to rise up and one way out and overtake this prison. It was beautiful. And then the fact that he says, I can't swim, like, all for nothing. He knew that all along. But he did that despite knowing. He did that to help everyone else. And then we just leave him and we have no idea. Like, oh, just beautiful. And then Luthen in the same episode, and I haven't really talked about Luthen, but for me, he was the best part of this series. He was my MVP, and anyway, he has a monologue in this episode talking about what he has sacrificed, and it's absolutely just gorgeously written. He's just this shop owner on Coruscant as a front and has a whole disguise and a ship that shoots lightsabers out of the sides. And then that mixed with the Kyber crystals raises some serious questions. I saw this all over the internet. There's honestly a lot of theory videos suggesting that Luthen is a Jedi. And if you know anything about that, please let me know down in the comments, because I haven't looked too much into it, but people are saying this could be a real thing, so. And yeah, like I said, I think Luthen was my favorite character, and what Skarsgård brought to the table was insane. And just kind of wrapping up, even though there's so much more to talk about, honestly, I'll probably end up making another video about Andor because I don't want this to go too long, but there really is so much to talk about. But yeah, like I was saying, wrapping up, the finale was superb. The show hit me in all the right ways, man. And there are a lot of different messages that we as the viewer can take away from this show. It had a lot of heart, and with that carries some emotional weight that leads us into the future that we know about that's very gloomy. We know what happens to Cassian in Rogue One. And I think that shines a light on why this show is the way that it is. It is sort of a heavy drama, but I think it does wonders at expanding the galaxy as a whole. To me personally, I haven't felt like Star Wars has had this much hope in a long time. And just like with every show, movie, or series, I gotta give my star rating. I'm giving Andor 4.5 out of 5 stars. No doubt. I thought this show was incredible. That being said, there are people that don't like this show, and that's okay. Just besides the show's like boring or slow critiques, I just don't really get what there isn't to like. But, you know, that's just me. If you feel opposite or if you feel the same, please let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinion, and also thank you so much for tuning in. As always, give this video a like if you're new to the channel and you enjoyed the content, and also consider subscribing. But anyway, yeah, that was Andor. As always, I hope you all are safe, happy, and healthy, and I'll be seeing you next time.